In this video, I'm going to show you what you need to actually send to your leads before a sales call. I'll be taking you through a simple automation build, which will allow you to automatically warm up your leads and also collect information from them before the sales call to increase your close rate within your agency. This is the exact same method that I use within my own agency and all of our partners' agencies over here at Fluxomate, where we help different agency owners all over the world set up scale-proof systems. We're going to be going over 2 live automation builds where I'll be showing you exactly how you can use this powerful lead magnet to increase your close rate for yourself or the different closers within your agency using a very simple set of automations. If you're new to the channel, you'll soon find out we don't hold anything back. So be ready to get your mind blown from a random guy on YouTube with an orange t-shirt. Let's get straight into how you can actually leverage lead magnets before your sales calls and what you need to be sending your leads before you actually go ahead and hop on a call with them. Alright guys, so before we get into everything, I want to have a very quick disclaimer. Firstly, this is just an example. There's obviously other ways to do this. This is just the way I'm going to be talking about in this video. Secondly, don't focus too much on the specific tools I'm actually talking about. I want you to focus on the actual structure of what I'm saying. So for example, one of the things we're using here is Zapier. If you're using something like Make.com rather than Zapier, you can still do this exact same thing just by following the structure of what I'm talking about. So if I mention a tool that you're not using, don't get too worried about that. Focus more so on the structure of everything I'm saying, because that'll be very easy to copy within different applications. And lastly, I want to make very clear that in this video, I'm not going to be holding anything back. There'll be no gatekeeping or anything like that. So make sure to enjoy yourself because we're about to go in. So let's just talk about the process of what I actually want this set of automations to actually complete. As soon as a lead actually goes ahead and books a call, we're going to go ahead and send them an email. Now, this is going to be one of 2 emails. This is going to be like a warm-up sequence kind of. And within those emails, we basically want them to funnel into a form. Now, once they complete the form, they'll get access to a specific lead magnet. Obviously, this is going to depend on specifically what you're doing. But this lead magnet has the aim of completing 2 different things. Firstly, we want it to actually warm up the different leads that we actually have. So we're going to make them a bit more familiar with our offer, and I'll show you how we'll do that in a second. But secondly, we also get to have all that information to the form, and we can actually share it with a close that's actually taking a call. This is very powerful. The more information we have from our lead, the better it is. So you can kind of structure your form questions in a way that allow you to kind of get an upper hand on a sales call. So when you actually come in, you're not talking to a complete stranger, but someone that you actually have some back information on. And once again, the whole aim of this is just to increase your close rate, because you're going to have warmer leads and also more information about the specific leads, which is a win-win for everyone. As a bonus, I'm also going to show you how you can actually leverage the form answers to further qualify your leads. For example, let's say you only want to deal with kind of qualified leads to keep your calendars as free as possible. We're going to be adding in part of the automation that will automatically cancel appointments if the leads are not qualified. That's a little bonus we're going to be throwing in. But for now, let's get straight into the actual automation part of this. So the first thing we need is an automation tool to actually build these. The 2 main ones are Zapier and Make. Now, there is a massive kind of discussion about which one's better and which one you should use. If you want my honest opinion, I think both of them are fairly similar. The best way to kind of decide these applications is just to start a free 14-day trial or whatever kind of trial they have. I know both of them do have a free version, and test it out and choose the one that best suits you. I think Zapier is probably a bit more beginner friendly, but it is a bit more expensive and you can do a bit less with it. And Make.com is less beginner friendly, at least at the start, but you can do a bit more with it and it is a bit cheaper. But once again, try out both of them with the free trials and choose the one that kind of works for you. In this video, we are going to be using Zapier, but like I said at the start of the video, don't get too focused on the specific tools we're using because you can make this work with Make.com as well. But for this example, we're going to be using Zapier. So there's 2 automations we're building out, technically free, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's get started with the first automation. This automation is going to trigger whenever a call is booked. So within Calendly, whenever someone watches your VSL, looks at your ad, comes through your organic content, and actually wants to book a call or speak to you, this automation will automatically trigger. As soon as it triggers, we're going to send it through a filter to make sure that this automation only works for sales calls. Once it's checked as only a sales call, it's going to go ahead and actually send that first initial email. This will be an email basically to confirm appointment and actually to get them to fill out that form we talked about a second ago with the aim of giving them a lead magnet. So that's the incentive for them to actually complete the form. After that, we're going to wait, let's say 12 hours or something like that. And then we'll go ahead and send a secondary email reminding them to complete the form and maybe sending over some more resources. For example, I use different YouTube videos, once again, just to warm them up a bit more. There's a very, very interesting study by Google, and it actually shows that for a consumer to actually trust you before they purchase off you, they need to watch about 7 hours of your content. So having things like the YouTube for us is a massive game changer and actually warming up our leads, because it allows them to put their trust in us because they have a lot of content to actually consume on expertise. But obviously, if you don't have a YouTube channel, there's different ways to do it. This is just the way we're going to be talking about in this video. I'm not going to talk about the second automation just yet. For now, let's head over to Zapier and begin building out this automation. All right, guys, so I've just opened up my Zapier test account, at least the one that we use for our YouTube channel. So within Zapier, you're going to go ahead and actually create a new Zap. If you haven't signed up, once again, I do have free trials. You can check out using the link somewhere in the description, probably. This is our automation. This is what we're actually going to be building out today. So I'm just going to go ahead and rename this automation #warm up. Cool. So the trigger for this, like I said earlier, is going to be a new call coming in. Now for this, I will be using Calendly, which is basically just a booking software. You can use something like GHL for this if that's what you're using to kind of take the bookings for your agency. And then for the event type, I want to have people that are booking in specifically through this link. Now, obviously, this is an example link, it's not a real link, but basically whenever someone books in a time that suits them, they go ahead and answer all these different questions, and we're going to filter it through so it only allows the event with this specific name to kind of go through. Let's get through in a second. First, let's set up the trigger. So for the trigger, I'm just going to go ahead and actually just search for Calendly, which is once again that booking application I'm going to be using in this video. Once we actually open up, for the event, we want to choose invitee created. Now, there are different options you can do, whether it's invitee cancelled or even no show created. But for now, we should leave it as invitee created because that's when an event is actually being booked. We're going to press continue. We're going to obviously go ahead and connect your account. It's not too complicated. Zapier makes it very, very easy for you guys. We're going to go ahead and press continue. Then we go to trigger, press continue again, and then we go out over to actually test. Now, I did book in a meeting to test this out yesterday when I was building automation out before the video. So we should see a meeting that I booked in with myself, as you can see right here with Leo Fluxomate. This is the example we're going to be using in this video as our lead that's gone ahead and booked a call. Cool. So now let's move on to the second option, which is the filter. Now, the reason we have the filter is very, very important. When you actually use this trigger within Zapier for Calendly, it triggers for every single call that you're actually being booked in your calendar. And obviously, we don't want this. So let's say you have client calls. We don't want client calls to be getting us different warm-up sequence or, for example, team calls. So we're going to just add an action right here. And it's going to be a filter by Zapier. And for the filter, all we want to do is choose the event type name as the field, just like that. And then for the condition, we're going to put contains, because this event type name is called sales example YouTube, something along those lines. I'm going to make sure that this event only continues if it contains sales, because all the other meeting types does not include sale. Now, for example, if your sales calls are called demonstration calls on Calendly, rather than putting sales here, you put demonstration. You get the idea. Obviously, you have to tailor it to your specific circumstances, but for now, I'll leave it. And if you go ahead and actually test it, you'll see now it will go through the filter just because we already checked it previously. So that's the first and second step done. Now this is basically going to trigger every single time a meeting gets booked, and it's only going to continue if it's actually a sales course. Now we can get on to the second bit, which is actually sending the email. Now, before we actually send the email, I will add a formatter step. Now, this is just basically changing the date from a bunch of digits to something that's actually legible within the email. And you'll see why I do that in a second. But for now, let's actually set this up quickly. So if I go to formatter, and for the event, I'm putting a date and time. I'm going to press continue. And to transform, I'm going to put format date, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to add any times, anything like that. We just want to format it into something that's a bit more legible. And for the input, we're going to go over to invitee created and put a scheduled event start time. Now, back in the day, I don't know why they changed it, but Calendly did used to have it already pretty within the API. But for now, we just have to change it using a formatter, which doesn't cost us anything, so it doesn't really matter. And for the format, obviously, you can see you have a bunch of different options. In this scenario, I'm just going to include this one right here. That's got the day, even a year, and the time, and we'll leave it as that. So we're going to go ahead and press continue. As you can see, now our date is going to go from this, which is basically just a bunch of digits that is hard to read, to something much cleaner that I can actually include within the email. Perfect. So now we're going to move on to the second step, which is actually sending that email. Now, remember, the goal of this email is to do one of two things. Firstly, we want to confirm the appointment for the lead. And secondly, we want to kind of push them towards the form so they can get whatever free value you're actually including. So for this, I'm going to be using Gmail. Obviously, you can use different mail providers like Outlook, but Gmail is just the one I always like to use. And for the event, if you scroll down, I'm going to go over to send email. Now, as you see here, you do have a bunch of different options. So rather than send an email, if you weren't too confident at the start anyways, you could go ahead and create the draft. But for this example, I'm just going to send the email straight away because there's nothing too complicated. So I'm going to send the email. You obviously want to go ahead and actually connect your account, which in this example is just leave out Fluxomate. And once that's done, we're going to move on to the action. Now, this is what basically set up the email that we're going to be sending to that lead. So firstly, for 2, I'm going to go ahead and enter that invitee email from the Calendly. This is basically the email of the person who's actually booked the call, because that's who we actually want to send it to. And if we go to subject, we can call this booking confirmation. Obviously, feel free to change this to whatever you want to. Confirmation. And then if we scroll down a bit, you can see the body. This is where we're actually going to be including the text that we're actually be sending a specific person. So previously I got ChatGPT to write quite a nice email for me. Obviously this is just an example, so feel free to tailor it and change it in whatever way you want for your specific circumstances. I will say as well, guys, that if you want the specific kind of resources of anything I'm talking about today, you can go ahead and check the first link in the description to join the free community and get access to a digital product for the specific videos. That's going to include a bind map we covered, all the different automation templates, and any other resource we actually use in the video. So if you do want to copy and paste it straight in your agency or within your automation, feel free to actually check that out. But for now, we're going to have this nice little email. And as you can see, there's a couple of things we actually need to change. So firstly is the name. For that, I'm just going to go to invitee created. And as you can see, we have the invitee name right there. Now, additionally, you could add another formatted step similar to what we did the date, but rather than the date, it'll be the text, and just to split the first name and the second name. So you just basically sending it individually. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as that. And for the output here, we want to add the date. Once again, the reason we added that formatted step is if we didn't, we'd have this very, very ugly long list of numbers in the date, which you don't really send in the email. So instead, we're going to choose the step number 3 and we're going to include the output, which is much, much cleaner. And as you can see, it's a very, very simple email. All I'm doing is just confirming their appointment, thanking them for booking in, and then kind of pointing them towards the link to the specific form. Now, I'm going to talk about the form in a second, but for now, let's just kind of leave it as this. And once again, I'll come back to form in a second because that's what's going to be allow us to firstly collect information and also go ahead and actually create that lead magnet for them. So I'm going to leave it as this for now. Let's go ahead and have another step. Now, this is the delay. Now, there's 2 different ways to kind of do delays on Zapier, and I'll load it up for you so you can get an idea of what I'm actually talking about as I'm saying it. As you can see, we have 2 different events. We have delay for and delay until. Obviously, there's delay off the queue, but for now, we're just going to focus on these 2. Delay for basically just waits a set amount of time before completing your actions. So, for example, if you put delay for 12 hours, every single time it's going to wait for 12 hours. Delay until, on the other hand, wait to run your actions until a date or time that you actually choose. That's the one we're actually going to be using today. The only reason I don't want to use delay for is because different prospects will book at different times, or I should say at different distances from the current event time. So for example, you can have someone that books on the same date, but you can also have someone that books in a week's time. So it's kind of difficult to put delay for because, you want to send an email, let's say 12 hours before the event or 6 hours before the event, not 12 hours from when they actually book. So that's why we always do delay until, and I'm going to show you how to actually set it up. If you go into delay until and we head over to action, this is where we can basically set up. So firstly, I'm going to go to invitee created and I'm going to enter that scheduled event start time. So what this basically is going to do right now is delay it until the scheduled event start time, which you don't really want. The cool thing about Zapier is when it comes to dates and time, it's very, very easy for you to kind of humanize it. So for example, here, I want to do -6 hours. So now it's going to automatically -6 hours from the event start time, and that's when it's actually going to send a secondary email. So if we go ahead and actually press continue and test this out, we should see it delay until 6 hours before the event start time, which as you can see here, it's actually gone ahead and done that, which I'm super, super happy about. Now it's jumped a bit more than 6 hours, which I'm not quite sure why. So rather than 6, I'm going to go ahead and put 3, and that should fix it, hopefully. I think it probably maybe might have got confused at different time zones. No, so for some reason, it's just releasing it 20. So let's see. So I think it's just got confused. Let's do -4H, and that should work, hopefully now. It still seems to be focused on 824 for some reason, which is very, very interesting. Let's see how we can actually go ahead and fix this. There you go. So now it's gone ahead and done 10:30, which I believe is 3 hours plus 1 before it. So yeah, very, very similar thing. Obviously, you can change it. You don't have to send it 4 hours before. You could do something like 6, even 12 if you wanted to. But for this example, I'm just going to leave it at 4. Perfect. So now we can move on to the next step, which is sending that secondary email. Now, like I said, Purpose of a secondary email is to further warm up the lead and give access to any more resources, as well as just pushing them to actually complete that form if they already have it. So for this, I'm just going to add another step here. And once again, I will choose Gmail, just like that. And for the event name, obviously, once again, you can do a draft if you want to. But for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and send an email straight because, once again, there's nothing too complicated. Go ahead and connect your account if you haven't already. And we're going to do a very, very similar thing to what we did in the first step to actually set up the email. So for the two, it's going to be straight from Calendly, the invited email right there. And for the subject, it's going to be nearly there, I guess. Obviously, feel free to change this. It's not a copyrighted masterclass. I'm here to show you the automations. And for the body this time, we're going to include a different email. Once again, the purpose of this is just to warm up a bit more. So what I'm actually going to do is just copy and paste the email that I've got, at least for the secondary email. So let me just find that. So this is just an example of the email I actually use. Obviously, it isn't formatted properly because when I actually send it, I do it through HTML. So for example, these links don't show up as links, they show up as just a title, so you can just easily press it. But once again, all we're doing here is just sharing some videos to warm up a bit further, and also remind them to actually complete that form to get access to the lead magnet, which in this case is a 20+ page breakdown document. And I'll show you a bit more about that in a second. Cool, guys. That's basically the first automation done. Nothing too complicated. Like I said, these are two very, very simple automations, and it's easy for anyone, even a beginner, to just copy and paste them straight into their agency. So now I'm just going to go ahead and leave this, and I want to talk about the form for a second. So as you saw in the second email that I just kind of copy and pasted from my own system, I send them to a type form where they can basically fill it out, and I'll have it up on the screen now so you can just get an idea of what I'm actually talking about. But they can go through, ask different questions about the agency, and from that they unlock this document right here. This is basically a 20-page document just breaking down my offer. I think the best way for you to get an understanding of it is to just check the first link in the description or the second link to see what I'm actually talking about. It's basically just a very, very short form. It takes about 5 minutes to do. And then from that, you get access to a 20+ page document. And all that document is doing is breaking down my offer, but more so, and the most important part, I think, is showing the lead a specific way that their specific situation fits in with the offer. So for example, within that automation document, I give great examples of how you can actually optimize your onboarding process, which the lead actually fills out in the form. I give specific examples of how you can actually optimize the client journey based on information you actually provide in a form. I give 5 different automation examples, once again, based on information they actually fill in the form. So as you can see, I'm not only warming up my lead, I'm showing them different possibilities of what my offer and what my solution actually looks like based on a specific situation, but also from the form, I get different information about the specific pain points, which will help me prepare for a sales call. I'll obviously put all of that on the screen, but I'm also going to talk about it here a bit more. So firstly, the form. In this example, I'm using type form, but obviously there's so many different ways you can actually do this. For example, you can use a Google form, even a Tally form. I just found type form probably looks the most aesthetic. And as you can see, if you get started, I'm asking a bunch of different questions. For example, what are you most interested in automating? What your primary goal you aim to achieve with automation? Once again, just trying to understand their pain points. And I can use all the information on a sales call to kind of leverage the call and just provide the most value as possible to them. So if we go ahead and press OK, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Obviously, the link is in the description if you want to check it out. But I'm basically asking 2 different types of questions. Firstly, questions that actually create the lead magnet, and secondly, questions to understand their pain points that I can actually leverage on a sales call. Now, if you did want to kind of qualify them, you could also ask different things like their monthly revenue, what niche they're in. For example, I know a lot of e-commerce agencies that do advertising for different e-commerce stores. They only want to work with agencies in specific niches. So if that's one of your kind of criteria and you only want to kind of hop on calls to qualify leads to keep your calendar clear, then you can also add qualifying questions to the form, kind of similar to what I did here. And then want to talk about how to actually qualify them in the next step. And just to give you an idea of what the lead magnet actually looks like, I went ahead and actually opened this random document. It's about 20 pages, like I said, probably even more actually, depending on your screen size. But as you can see, if you scroll down, it's just a bunch of different information about my offer, how it actually works. And if you scroll here, this is the part that's automatically generated by AI. Now, I will say I'm not too focused on the AI side of things because I have a whole another video you can check out in the top right hand corner on how to actually do that. I'm also focused on the actual automation side of things. I will show you how to do it in this video, but it's not going to be as in depth. But as you can see, all this content here is automatically generated by AI, depending on the submissions from the actual form. And once again, the whole purpose of that is just to give them an insight on what my offer actually looks like in their business. So there's obviously a bunch of different ways you can leverage this. For example, you can do ad creatives rather than automation side of things or different operation side of things, but it's a very, very cool tool to actually send to a lead before the sales calls. And for me anyways, it's worked at charm and actually increasing my close rate within my own agency. But cool guys, we've gone ahead and actually completed that first automation. And now let's move on to the second automation that basically triggers whenever a form is complete. And then it's going to go ahead and create a lead magnet and actually share the lead magnet and then share the message to the closer. Now, rather than actually building an automation out from scratch, because I've built this automation a ton of times on this channel, I'm going to just show you my automation that I actually have and kind of talk through how it actually works. Because I think that'll be a bit more valuable. Because in the previous step, I showed you how to build it from scratch. But for this one, where it's very, very specific on your specific situation, I might as well just show you the behind the scenes of my actual automation. All right, guys, so this is the behind the scenes of the automation. Now, this is quite a long automation, so don't get too scared by it. I'm not going to show you the live one I actually have, but this is a previous version before we actually improved it. And yeah, it is quite a long automation, but once again, don't stress too much about it. I'm going to talk you through here. So if you open up, firstly, the trigger is obviously a form being completed. In this example, I use Typeform, but like I said earlier, you can use something like Google Form, even Tally, which are free options. In my opinion, Typeform just looks a bit better. And in this case, this form triggers when they complete the form called new lead magnet form, which is the form I showed you a second ago within Typeform. The next step I do is actually go ahead and find that template Google document. I do that by open up the file, open up the specific document. The way it's actually set out is that the document is a bunch of kind of generic text, and the bits I want to edit using AI to make it specific for the actual need, for example, the lead's name and everything like that, I put in these square brackets right here. This is the exact same thing you do on something like PowerPoint or any sort of contract within Google Docs to actually customize the text from a template. So, but the first thing we actually need to do that is actually find that original document so it knows what to build off of. Then we go into a bunch of different ChatGPT prompts to kind of summarize different things from the form so we can actually output that in the form. Now, you can do this in one big prompt. However, there's some limitations. Firstly, it will limit the actual output they actually get. Within the actual document, as you see, if you actually fill it out and go very, very in depth on how to actually do the different things, such as improving your onboarding, everything like that. And if I were to put everything in one prompt, then the level of responses would be much lower. So instead, I'd rather split it up. And it is a bit more expensive, but we'll see. It does cost a bit of money in terms of the API usage to actually run this automation. Nothing crazy, maybe like $6 a month or something like that. But obviously, it's a bit more expensive if you were to just use only one prompt. The second reason is that it also allows me to kind of section the text a bit easier. So for example, like I said earlier, in these square brackets right here, this is where we kind of section the text. If I were to put everything in one prompt, I'd have to add another step to kind of split it up into different individual sections, which just makes my life a bit complicated. So it's a win-win to kind of split up the prompts into specific things. So as you can see, I've kind of labeled them here. This one just summarizes the current client onboarding, and I can actually show you this because I'm not using this anymore. I did upgrade this to an assistant, but at the time, I just did a ChatGPT user message, and it's a very, very simple kind of prompt. Like I said, I have upgraded it since then, but it gives you an idea of how we can actually do this. So here I'm basically asked it to create a visual diagram breakdown. And as you saw in an example which I showed you a second ago, it actually goes ahead and does that, which is quite cool. And I just kind of repeat this for every single one of the steps, kind of breaking it down. I will say that when you're actually using AI within your automations, especially if you're not building in a system first, which you can learn how to actually do in this video, then you will have to play around with the prompt a bit because it's very, very hard to get perfect, especially the first time. So this is probably, I don't know, the 10th kind of prompt I actually did. And I had to do that for every single one of the stages. So it's a bit hard, but it's definitely worth the reward. I did also add a delay here because I found that it basically didn't have enough time to complete every single one of the executions. So I added, I think, a 1 minute delay or something like that. Let's see. It might even be 2 minutes. So yeah, a 2 minute delay just to avoid it to clunking up because I was finding a lot of errors. And obviously because I am doing quite a lot of submissions to ChatGPT, I don't want to overload it with any information. But yeah, I do the exact same thing for onboarding, then the client journey, and then the automation examples. Once that's all done, I go ahead and go back to the document, which I found in the previous step, and create a template from that document. And as I'll show you in a second, guys, if I open this up, you can basically see, right, what I'm doing here is add the name of the agency, and then for each one of the processes, which I mapped out using, once again, these brackets right here, I go ahead and add the relevant part of the AI response, making it one large document with the sections which are customized based on a specific lead. Now, obviously, if you're watching this, you'll know that this is AI and that the whole thing isn't generated by AI. But for a lead that actually watches this, especially someone that's just booked a sales call, it's just such a great way to warm them up and show them what your offer actually looks like within an agency. Obviously, it is a bit long, which is why I don't recommend doing this for cold leads. I recommend doing this for much, much warmer leads because, realistically, no one's going to sit through a 20 plus stage document breaking down how you can actually help them if they don't know who you are. But it's a reason I'm telling you to actually complete this right before a sales call because this can have a massive impact on your close rate. Once you've actually gone ahead and actually create a document with all the information we created in the previous prompts, we go ahead and actually send that email. Now you'll see I do use HTML to actually format that email. When sending emails through automation, I'm jumping a bunch of different things here, guys, but I kind of want to speak my mind. But when using sending an email through automation, I always recommend converting it to HTML. This is very, very simple to do. Just type out your email as you normally would. Go to ChatGPT and ask him to actually convert it to HTML, and then change the body type to HTML within automation, and then you can copy and paste it right in. It improves the layout so much more. But as you can see here, all I'm doing is just dropping the link to the actual drive folder. And one very, very important thing I forgot to mention is that when you actually create your folder, make sure the sharing preferences are actually set to writer so that people that actually have the link can actually access the document, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. Now I have added some extra steps here, which basically also adds them to my email list. And the reason it's split into two is because it basically checks if the profile already exists. If it doesn't exist, then it goes ahead and just creates a profile and then sends the email. And if it does exist, it just removes the profile from a specific list and then adds it to a new list. And then we go ahead and send a channel message to the closer. In your example, in my example, I'm just the one taking all the sales calls with information just to let us know that they've actually completed a lead. And then we kind of summarize the information from the form straight in the actual automation. And that's pretty much it. I do have another delay, which I think is about 12 hours to kind of follow up to make sure they actually open the form. Big expects a charm because some people might miss the first email, but most cases they don't miss the second email. And don't forget, guys, this all happens automatically. So as soon as someone fills out the form, within 5 minutes, they actually get access to this email. So there's no reason why they shouldn't kind of open the first email. But just in case I do add that delay, I think it's 12 hours or 48 hours, sorry, and kind of send a follow-up message to make sure they actually open that document and kind of take next steps if they're interested. So yeah, guys, now I can make a whole video breaking this automation down and recording it. I did something similar in the video I showed you previously with kind of lead magnet creation, but I'm not against doing it again. But I thought it would be a bit more valuable to show that behind the scenes of one of the older automations I used to use, rather than just creating this whole thing from scratch, which I've already done before. But that's pretty much it for the second automation as well. So you now know how to firstly create a false automation to trigger whenever a call is booked and then send them an email, kind of prompted them towards a specific form. And now you also know how to create automation that whenever the form is completed, to create the lead magnet, share the lead magnet, and message the closer. Once again, I will include both of these templates within a school community and a specific digital product for this video, so you can join that for using the first link in the description if you just want to copy and paste it right within your agency. But now let's talk about the bonus automation, which basically qualifies them based on their form responses. Now, like I said, in order for this to work, you do need to kind of ask them a qualifying question within the form. So an example of this could be, what is your monthly revenue if you only want to work with people that are, let's say, doing 30K plus a month, or what niche are you in, or do you own an agency, different things like that. If any of the responses are unqualified, then we want to go down this path and actually cancel the meeting. We are going to be using some code, but I promise you guys, there's nothing complicated. I've already kind of figured out everything for you. You just have to copy and paste it within your own agency. So let's go over and actually go ahead and create this event. All right, guys, so I've gone ahead and actually created a new automation. Now, you would include this as part of your second automation. So whenever the form gets responded, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that up quickly. The trigger for this is going to be a type form response. So once again, you can use Google form, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if I look for type form, and for the actual event is going to be a form completion, which is a new entry. That's what they call it. Obviously, go ahead and connect your specific account. And now for the trigger, obviously there's about a bunch of different forms. But for this example, we're going to be using the lead magnet form. Don't focus too much on a specific kind of test because it's going to depend on your specific entry and your different qualifiers. But for this example, I'm just going to pull a random contact that's actually for the form, and we're going to go from there. Cool. So we have this entry right here. Perfect. Now, the way we're going to do this is set up two different paths. So one path for the qualified leads and one path for the unqualified leads. So if I go over to paths by Zapier, and I do think you need a premium account for this, but it's going to basically split into two paths. And this is where we actually set the conditions for the two paths. So for path A, which I'm going to call my qualified path, once again, guys, this is just an example. If you had a question that was asking a monthly revenue, you can include, does not include 0 to 5K if that's unqualified for you. But for this example, I'm just going to leave it as that. And if I go and actually test this, you see this will not go through because this specific lead will not be qualified. So in this example, I'm going to call them as unqualified. In the question where I ask how large your team is, they answer just me. Obviously, this is an example. If you were to do this, you have to kind of structure it based on your specific qualifiers. But the way I actually did that, right? If I go over, went ahead and chose the field asking him how large the actual team is, which you can find right here. And then I put does not contain me, because one of the responses that indicates that there's just them, just me. So that can be unqualified for them. So this will be the qualified path. For the unqualified path, I'm only going to continue if I'm going to find that how large is your team question again. And within that, rather than does not contain, this I'm going to put contain, because we want all the unqualified leads to go down the path B. So, and then I'm going to put me. And if you test this, you'll see then it will go ahead and go through. Once again, this is just an example why you can use different filters. You're going to have to change that to your specific kind of questions you have in your form, but I hope to give you understanding on how you actually set up the two different paths. Now, path A is the qualified path. So this is where you go ahead and actually continue with the ChatGPT and then the Google document stuff, actually sharing the lead magnet. Path B is where you're going to go ahead and actually continue with the unqualified side of things. So there's two kind of things we need to do. First, we need to format the text. So if we go over to Formatter by Zapier, for the event, we're going to choose text. And then for the actual action, we're going to put split text. It's going to make a lot more sense when we actually do this later as to why we're actually doing this. But we just need to split the text to get a specific output from the URL. So I'm just going to put split text just like that. Now, as the input, we do need to include that scheduled event URL. And there's two different ways to do this. And I'm going to show you both in this video. You can obviously go ahead and decide which one you can do. The first one's probably a bit easier. The second one's a bit more complicated. I'll start with the more complicated one, actually. So the second way to do this, which is a bit more complicated, is as soon as someone books a meeting using the first automation, you want to add them to a meeting database. This is something like this, where you're basically tracking every single meeting that comes in, the day, the meeting event, obviously the email of the attendee, and as a new column, you'd add in here the event URL. That's one way to do it. And then basically, as soon as someone submits the form, you just want to add a step to basically search within this database based on the email and recollect that event URL, because that's what we're actually going to need to actually cancel that event. That's the second way to do it, which is a bit harder. When I say harder, it's not necessarily difficult to do. It just takes a bit longer because you need a bit more steps. The second way to do this, which is a bit easier, is just to cancel the meeting based on the Calendly questions. Now, I do have another video on this once again, like I always do, but I want to go through in detail of it, how to actually do that now. If you go back to this kind of initial onboarding automation, you can go over and add a different path, kind of similar to what we did previously. And once again, all we're doing here is qualifying them based on specific steps. Let's say path B is an unqualified step, similar to what we did last time. We just want to do the exact same thing we did a second ago. So first, we want to do the formatter by Zapier. For the event, it's going to be text. And then for action, it's going to be split text, because we just want to get that specific last bit from the scheduled event URL, which is the important bit. Now, the reason I say this is probably a bit easier because you don't have to add a bunch of different steps to both automations. You can just add that to that first initial automation, kind of different paths, depending whether they're qualified or not. But if we go to the event created and we get the scheduled event URL, which should be all the way at the bottom, just right there. And then for the separator, you just want to put a dash. And it's very, very important for the segment index, you select all the way down as separate fields. This is very important because we'll need them separately. So if you're going to test this, you should get about 4 or 5 different fields from the output, which you do right there. The important one is output 5. This is basically the event ID, which is what we're actually going to use to actually cancel that specific event. Now, the second step when we've done that is actually run Python. Now, by the way, you do a very, very similar thing if you use the step I showed you a second ago, where you're basically finding that URL from the meeting database and so on and so forth. You just have to do it, obviously, on that automation on this one. But for this, I'm going to choose Python by Zapier. And once again, guys, I'm going to give you guys everything so it's not complicated at all. So I'm going to put code by Zapier, sorry. And then for the event, I'm going to put run Python. I'm going to press continue. And honestly, guys, I've just generated codes using ChatGPT. If there's any changes to from the time you're watching this, whenever it is that you're watching this, and when I'm recording right now, feel free to just copy and paste this code in ChatGPT, copy and paste the error you actually get, and it should come up with a solution for you guys. Next, we're going to go ahead and actually run the Python. Now, the first thing we want to do is input the data. And for this, we want to put event underscore ID, which is what we got in the last step. And we're going to just input that right here just by going over here and inputting the output 5, which is that kind of long code with the dashes. Then all you want to do is just copy and paste this specific code right here, just like that. And obviously there's a bunch of different things here. The key thing you actually need to do is follow these instructions right here, which is replace it with your actual URL. This is just basically an API call. Zapier doesn't have this set up for some reason, so all we're doing is just sending an API call to that specific meeting ID just to qualify and mark it as not qualified. Once again, just choose this bit that's blurred out right here with your actual API token, which you can find on Calendly very, very easily. And that's pretty much about it. We can actually test this if you'd like. You press continue and just test the step. It's going to go ahead and then cancel the meeting. Just like that, we're going ahead and actually cancel the meeting and call it not qualified. Happy with that. I would also recommend adding another step just kind of explaining why the meeting was qualified. For this, you can go Gmail or once again, whatever email provider you'd like to actually use. And then for the event, you want to scroll down to send email, obviously connect your account, and then say something along the lines of, oh, I'm sorry, you're not really qualified. This doesn't mean we can't work together in the future. And then I also recommend sharing some more free resources just to kind of build that goodwill. But that's basically how you can automatically qualify your leads using very, very simple automation. So just to recap, there's two different ways you can actually do that. The first way is basically having some sort of meeting database like the Airtable database I've got right here. And within the Airtable database, you want to include a scheduled event URL and then someone actually books a call. So for example, within this automation towards the start, you'd add a step to actually create a record within a database with all the meeting information. And then in the second automation, which is based on the form responses, you'd add another step to search that field based on a specific email of the person that's actually completed that form to find that scheduled event URL. And if any of the questions are unqualified, then that's when you can actually go ahead and follow the exact same steps I showed you with the code and the formatter to basically cancel that meeting. Nothing too complicated. Obviously, I know I kind of yapped on a lot. But it is quite simple in its fundamental. You just have to copy and paste it and apply it to your specific circumstances, depending on what specifically you want to do. But guys, that's pretty much it. You now have a very, very simple set of automations that will allow you to automatically send warm up or nurture sequences to your leads with a powerful lead magnet backed by their own data. So you can first warm them up and secondly, collect information before the sales call to increase your close rate. And as a bonus, I also showed you how you can further qualify your leads and cancel any appointments that are not qualified. So you can keep a calendar as clear as empty for those qualified leads to actually book in. None of the things I showed you here are too complicated. Like I said, there are different ways to do this. This is probably the most beginner friendly, and I recommend checking out all the videos I talked about in this video to give you a better idea of how to actually create different things like a lead magnet in depth. Apart from that, guys, that's it from me. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this on your feed. We actually recently hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for everyone's support. We're definitely growing bit by bit. I do have a special offer for you guys that actually watched on to the end. If you want to get access to the automation templates I used in this video, the Airtable database, the mind map I kind of walked you through here, and any different resource from this video, you can check out the first link in the description to actually access our school community where we have all of the different resources. There you'll find a specific resource for this video where, like I said, you'll find different things like the automation templates and the mind map. It's 100% free, and within there we're really growing community full of agency owners who are actually looking to set up scale-proof systems. It's a great place to also have direct access to me and my team. So if you have any questions about this video or didn't explain anything clearly and you want to elaborate a bit more, feel free to join in. Ask. We're there to actually support you guys. And apart from that, guys, I really recommend you watch this video right here to give you more insight on how to actually create that perfect lead magnet, which what we like to call a dog magnet. It works best for a bit warmer leads, but you can also use it for cold leads depending on your kind of setup. Apart from that, guys, that's it from me. I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions about anything, make sure to drop a comment below or within the school community. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next one. Bye bye.